Hi, my name is David Gerhard. I'm the department head in computer science at the University of Regina. This is just a quick video to let you know some of the features and requirements of online learning in the winter 2021 semester and perhaps going forward. First of all, I want to remind you that in order to participate in online learning, you are required and expected to have access to a computer, a camera, microphone, speakers, and a good internet connection. If you don't have these things, you won't be able to participate in the activities requirements of the courses that you're taking at the University of Regina. So make sure you have access to these technical requirements. Online examinations will happen in a number of different ways, but if your instructor has chosen to use a traditional proctored examination, that examination will happen via ProctorTrack. ProctorTrack is the approved online proctoring solution that the University of Regina is using. It meets or exceeds all of the privacy regulations of the province of Saskatchewan, the Government of Canada, and the specific regulations of the University of Regina. It's fine. There's been a lot of really problematic and incorrect information distributed about ProctorTrack over the last few months, and it's important that you get the correct information about this platform. The correct information is available on the University of Regina website, accessible at the blue bar at the top of any U Regina web page. And the key information is that ProctorTrack is being used specifically to replicate the circumstances of an in-person exam. In the past, in an in-person exam, you would go into a gym and three specific things would happen. Your identity would be verified using your student ID. Your access to materials would be restricted by the proctors that are in the room. And the event would be recorded. In traditional gym settings, there are video cameras that record the examination events for the purposes of investigating potential academic misconduct. And this is what we are using ProctorTrack for. We are verifying that you are who you say you are using your U of R student ID and a facial scan. We are ensuring that you do not have access to unapproved materials by restricting your access to websites and in-person materials. And we are recording the event, but we are using that recording only in the instance of an investigation of potential academic misconduct. We are not using ProctorTrack to identify suspicious behavior. If an instructor sees an answer that you gave and is suspicious that you may have cheated on that answer, they will forward that information to the investigating dean, and the investigating dean will look at the recording. And that's all we're using it for. We're not using the AI, we're not scanning your knuckles, we're not doing all those other things that ProctorTrack is able to do, just replicating the features of an in-person exam. So make sure that you're clear on that. If your instructor has said that they are going to be using ProctorTrack, first of all, they'll inform you in the syllabus and on the first day of classes, and you'll be required to complete an onboarding process. This is where you first verify your identity with ProctorTrack and then connect your instance of ProctorTrack to the course you're taking. So there's two phases. The first phase is with ProctorTrack itself, where you show your ID card and you have to use a piece of photo ID. University of Regina student ID is the most important version of that ID and is the one that we would expect you to use. And your face scan. And then that information is vetted by a human being to ensure that you are who you say you are. Then, when you actually go to take an exam, the onboarding that you perform through UR courses connects your instance of ProctorTrack to the course that you're taking. So even if you've onboarded with ProctorTrack before, you still have to complete the onboarding quiz for every course that you take. When that quiz is announced by your instructor, you should complete that as soon as you can, because if you try to complete that the day before the exam, there may not be time to finish vetting your identity and you may not be able to write the exam, and then you would fail the class. So this can be problematic, and so you need to be prepared for participation in these kind of examinations. And if even after having the correct information, you're still not convinced that you're comfortable using ProctorTrack for a proctored examination, you have the option to wait until we resume normal operations after the global pandemic has passed in order to complete your courses at the University of Regina. UR courses, which I've mentioned already once, is the learning management system that we are using, and all of your courses will have a UR Courses instance that will say at minimum what to expect in your class, but usually will also contain things like assignments and examinations and notes and protocols and activities and everything else that you're going to be doing. It is your responsibility to check UR Courses regularly. It is not the instructor's responsibility to chase you down for a missing assignment here or there. If you choose not to submit assignments, then your mark will be reflected as a result. So check UR Courses regularly and participate in the forums that are there. Zoom is the video call protocol that we are using. And again, it has been approved and vetted by the University of Regina, and this is the platform that we are using. And it's important to make sure that you participate in the Zoom events that your instructor is providing for you. So if you have a Zoom lecture and you choose not to show up, well, the instructor may take attendance, and that might be worth grades, and you might not get those grades if you don't show up for the class. But don't just show up, right? Really participate, really engage in the material and try your best to understand what is being asked of you and to engage in all the activities and participation events and opportunities that are there for you. The attendance may be taken via Zoom. Instructors may check the logs of the Zoom events to make sure that students are participating in the way that they're supposed to. UR Courses has logs that tell the instructor what each student does and when. And so if you, come to the office hours saying, I don't really understand, and the instructor goes and checks the logs and sees that you haven't downloaded the notes and you haven't watched the lecture videos, well, then we're going to have a bad time. So make sure that you participate by downloading the notes, by watching the videos, doing the things that the instructor has asked you to do in order to learn the material. Do your best to engage in the way that the courses have been presented to you, and we as instructors and TAs and lab instructors are doing our best to try to present the information in reasonably engaging ways so that you have an opportunity to learn. Do your best to engage. I have one more thing to say today, and that is that some students are using the opportunity of online learning to attempt to cheat. They are submitting other people's work as if it was their own. Don't do it. These students are getting caught, and reasonable penalties are being applied. We can tell when students submit work that is not their own. We can tell when two students submit work that is similar, and we can tell when students submit work that has been downloaded from an online source like Chegg. We know Chegg exists. We know the quality of answers that are available there, and frankly, the quality of answers that are available on Chegg are not great. This is how we can tell that they're not your answers, is because they're not really good answers, and because 6 people submit the same answer. We know that online learning incurs situations whereby people might have to work together. If 2 roommates are taking the same class, and you're working at the same table, doing the same work day after day, well, then there's the potential for your work to look similar. It is your responsibility to convince the instructor that you yourself have done the work and that you're not submitting somebody else's work as your own. In all cases where students are trying to cheat, people are getting caught and appropriate penalties are being applied. These penalties can range from a 0 in the activity to expulsion from the university. We take this stuff very seriously. And in all cases, you will have a record, a letter on your permanent file that says that you engaged in academic misconduct. Don't do it. Do the work yourself, learn the material yourself, and prove to the instructor that you know what you're doing. That is the best way to make sure that you're not investigated for academic misconduct. These kind of activities have a further consequence, which is that otherwise honest students are tempted to see the situation and say, everybody else is cheating, so I had better cheat too, because that's the only way I can make sure that my mark is commensurate with what everybody else is getting. Know that we are vigilant about academic misconduct. We are finding the students who are choosing to cheat instead of put the effort in. And your effort will be rewarded, and your attempts to cheat will be appropriately dealt with. So, that's all I have to say. Again, we know that this is not an ideal situation. We are all hoping for the day when we are back in class again, doing in-person teaching again. Our hope is that that day is not very far off, but until that day comes, engage in the material, do well, do the work, and I hope to meet you all when this is all over.